The imported Italian marble countertop in my sister's recently renovated kitchen cost exactly $18,400. I knew this specific detail because the unpaid contractor invoice was sitting directly beneath my left hand. Chloe was currently laughing at my faded wool coat. She poured a tall glass of vintage French champagne and loudly told our mother I lacked basic financial ambition. My name is Marcus. I am 32 years old. I live alone in a highly modest apartment in the center of Boston. I work as a Senior Underwriting Systems Architect for a commercial lending institution. My daily job involves designing automated risk assessment algorithms. I build the software that detects synthetic identity fraud across multiple banking networks. I do not get angry when people mock my frugal lifestyle. I simply observe their behavioral data. Before we dive into the ledger, where are you listening to this story right now? What time is it in your specific time zone? Tell me in the comments below. Our mother Eleanor nodded in enthusiastic agreement with Chloe. She adjusted her new platinum tennis bracelet under the recessed lighting. She condescendingly suggested I should take out a personal bank loan to finally upgrade my pathetic wardrobe. Her advice was mathematically ironic. I was currently looking at a printed credit inquiry alert on my secure mobile device. The alert notified me of a newly issued home equity line of credit. The total initial drawn amount was exactly $215,890.50. The massive loan was legally secured against a sprawling luxury suburban property I did not even own. However, the primary signatory listed on the digitized mortgage contract was me. They had deliberately forged my primary digital signature using a highly corrupted electronic identity verification token. This is a highly specific federal banking crime punishable by 20 years in prison. I kept my breathing perfectly steady at exactly 12 respirations per minute. I did not confront them with the active digital evidence on my screen. I calmly placed my secure mobile phone directly back into my dark winter wool pocket. I politely thanked my arrogant sister for her entirely unsolicited wardrobe advice. Chloe smiled brightly and handed me a small plate of expensive imported cheese. She had absolutely no idea she was feeding a man who built the exact banking infrastructure she just illegally manipulated. The parasitic financial dynamic in my family was not a sudden development. It was a highly predictable downward statistical trend spanning 15 years. Our father abandoned the family when I was 17 years old. He left behind a staggering consumer debt load totaling $42,600. Eleanor did not adjust her affluent lifestyle to match her newly diminished economic reality. She simply transferred the crushing financial burden directly onto my teenage shoulders. She demanded I work 50 hours a week at a local hardware store to cover her luxury car lease. Chloe was exactly 3 years older than me and entirely exempt from this grueling physical labor. Eleanor claimed my sister needed to focus entirely on her highly competitive collegiate dance team. I paid the recurring monthly utility bills so Chloe could attend expensive out-of-state dance competitions. I willingly sacrificed my own college savings to keep the municipal power grid active in our home. I foolishly believed their repeated promises that they would eventually repay my substantial financial contributions. This was a massive failure in my basic risk underwriting methodology. They never intended to balance the internal family ledger. They viewed my income as a permanent and highly elastic financial resource. Whenever I attempted to set basic economic boundaries, they resorted to intense emotional manipulation. Eleanor would routinely stage elaborate panic attacks in the living room. She would hyperventilate and claim my financial selfishness was actively triggering a severe cardiac event. Chloe would send me dozens of frantic text messages accusing me of deliberately destroying our mother. I eventually moved out and completely severed our combined bank accounts to protect my baseline credit score. My strategic withdrawal temporarily stabilized my personal financial portfolio. I spent exactly 8 years meticulously building a flawless 840-point credit score. I achieved a highly optimal debt-to-income ratio of precisely 4.2%. My entitled mother and sister continued their reckless deficit spending without my direct capital subsidies. Chloe married a mid-level marketing executive who shared her severe financial delusions entirely. They financed a massive suburban estate using highly volatile adjustable-rate mortgages. They were completely leveraged on toxic debt and rapidly running out of viable credit options. They desperately needed a pristine financial host to survive the upcoming fiscal quarter. They confidently chose to quietly target me as their next primary financial victim. Eleanor and Chloe believed my professional career consisted of filing generic paperwork in a cubicle. They fundamentally misunderstood the core architecture of modern commercial banking. I did not simply process consumer loans. I designed the automated risk engine that actually approved them. I held a Level 4 administrative clearance within the centralized National Underwriting Database. My secure terminal granted me direct read access to thousands of daily mortgage originations. Their critical mistake was assuming my digital identity was entirely defenseless. I managed the family tax filings for the past 7 years. I maintained a secure encrypted cloud server to store our vital personal documents. I personally paid the recurring annual hosting fee of exactly $114.60. Chloe casually used my master password to access this specific server. She illegally downloaded my digitized tax forms and my unredacted federal tax returns. She needed this specific income verification data to secure the massive home equity loan. She bypassed the standard automated banking security checks using a fraudulent third-party broker. The broker used a spoofed Internet Protocol address to submit the falsified mortgage application. They assumed the approved loan was now safely closed and permanently locked. They did not understand how post-origination compliance auditing actually works. The bank utilizes a continuous monitoring algorithm to detect delayed synthetic fraud. I literally wrote the core Python script for that specific fraud detection algorithm. I possessed the master decryption keys for the entire regional lending network. I could see the exact digital fingerprint of their fraudulent loan application. I noted the specific time stamp when Chloe uploaded my forged signature. It was exactly 2:14 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. I monitored the automated clearinghouse routing numbers. I tracked the exact destination of the $215,890.50. The funds were wired directly into an offshore escrow account managed by her contractor. They used my pristine credit to finance a massive structural addition to her suburban home. They relied entirely on my unseen digital labor to fund their extravagant lifestyle. They treated my stolen identity like a limitless ATM machine. I was not going to argue with them about basic morality. I was preparing to use my absolute system access to trigger a catastrophic financial correction. Their fraudulent loan was highly vulnerable. I was the silent administrator of their ruin. I left Chloe's house exactly 42 minutes after she handed me the champagne. I ignored the ongoing party and drove back to my downtown apartment in complete silence. My resting heart rate remained entirely stable at 64 beats per minute. I unlocked my secure home office door. I immediately booted up my primary encrypted workstation. The dual desktop monitors illuminated the dark room with a harsh blue light. I accessed the secure virtual private network connecting me directly to the commercial banking mainframe. This was my definitive and logical breaking point. The time for silent observation was officially over. I opened the centralized underwriting dashboard. I entered my Level 4 biometric authorization credentials. I located the specific fraudulent home equity line of credit. The internal system ID was Alpha 79er Delta. I accessed the active disbursement ledger for the $215,890.50. The funds were currently pending final settlement in the contractor's offshore escrow account. I initiated an immediate administrative hard freeze on the entire transaction batch. I selected the specific internal system code for synthetic identity fraud. I executed the command with a single deliberate keystroke. The digital transfer was instantly paralyzed. I did not stop with the primary fraudulent mortgage loan. Eleanor currently utilized a supplementary credit card linked directly to my oldest revolving credit account. She used this specific card to quietly pay for her monthly cosmetic dermatology appointments. The recurring charge was exactly $745.20. I navigated to the secondary cardholder management portal located within the core banking software. I selected her specific account profile and permanently revoked her authorization privileges. I categorized the termination under suspected internal family fraud. The physical plastic card in her designer purse was now entirely worthless. I calmly opened the administrative console for my encrypted cloud storage server. I reviewed the internal access logs. I confirmed Chloe's unauthorized entry using a spoofed Internet Protocol address originating from her suburban zip code. I permanently banned her specific hardware media access control address from the entire external network architecture. I changed the master encryption keys using a randomly generated 256-bit alphanumeric sequence. Their access to my tax forms and digitized financial history was completely eradicated. The digital drawbridge was now fully and permanently raised. My final administrative action was securing my personal identity profile across all 3 major national credit bureaus. I initiated a severe federal security freeze on my primary Social Security number. This specific federal lock legally prevents any new credit lines from being opened without my direct physical verification. The entire administrative severance process took exactly 14 minutes and 12 seconds to complete. I systematically cut their financial lifelines without generating a single automated warning notification. They were completely unaware that their luxury lifestyle was currently crashing into a massive concrete wall. I closed out of the terminal and went directly to sleep. My mind was completely clear. The systemic block triggered its first physical manifestation at precisely 9:14 the following morning. Eleanor attempted to pay for her scheduled dermal filler injections at the luxury cosmetic clinic. The point-of-sale terminal returned a hard decline code 04. This specific internal banking code signifies a permanently revoked secondary user authorization. She immediately attempted to bypass the physical terminal by manually entering the credit card number. The encrypted merchant gateway rejected the transaction and flagged it for manual security review. She was formally escorted out of the medical lobby in absolute profound public humiliation. Chloe experienced the sudden and absolute financial paralysis exactly 3 hours later. Her general contractor attempted to draw the first massive construction installment from the offshore escrow account. The automated clearinghouse network returned a severe Alpha 9 rejection code. This indicates a frozen asset pool under active federal fraud investigation. The contractor immediately halted all physical labor on her imported marble kitchen. He demanded a certified cashier's check for $62,400 by the end of the business day. He threatened to file an immediate contractor's lien against her entire suburban property if she failed to pay. My personal mobile device began registering frantic incoming communications at exactly 1 p.m. Eleanor left 7 consecutive voicemails spanning a total of 14 minutes and 12 seconds. She quickly adopted her standard theatrical cadence of highly manufactured emotional distress. She accused me of deliberately sabotaging her essential medical care out of pure spite. Chloe deployed a much more aggressive tactical approach through encrypted text messages. She demanded I immediately log into the banking portal and manually override the escrow freeze. She claimed the contractor was currently packing his heavy equipment and threatening aggressive civil litigation. Chloe explicitly stated she would tell our extended family I was experiencing a severe psychological breakdown. She threatened to call my corporate human resources department and report me for familial financial abuse. She assumed these aggressive social engineering tactics would force my immediate and unconditional compliance. She did not realize I had already preemptively notified my senior compliance officer of a pending synthetic fraud investigation involving my identity. I had explicitly documented their fraudulent loan origination data within the official corporate security ledger. Her empty threats of professional sabotage were mathematically useless against a fully documented federal compliance file. I did not respond to a single voicemail or frantic text message. I sat at my dual monitor workstation and observed their panic through the live banking telemetry. I watched Chloe repeatedly attempt to log into my highly secured cloud server using exactly 15 different incorrect alphanumeric passwords. The server automatically logged her frantic Internet Protocol address with every single failed attempt. I meticulously collected this pristine behavioral data to add to the final criminal dossier. They were rapidly escalating their hostility because their artificial financial reality was completely collapsing. I maintained absolute radio silence and methodically prepared to execute the final administrative trap without hesitation. I needed undeniable empirical proof to completely dismantle their fabricated reality. Chloe assumed a digital signature was simply a meaningless pixelated image on a screen. She clearly did not understand the underlying cryptography of a biometric security token. I opened the primary fraud investigation module on my secure terminal. I initiated a complex SQL query to extract the raw metadata from the original loan application. The digital signature file contained a highly specific electronic certificate. This certificate logged the exact Internet Protocol address of the user who clicked the final approval button. The system recorded the address as 73.45.102.18. I ran a localized geographic trace on this specific numerical sequence. It mapped directly to the local internet service provider router installed inside Chloe's suburban living room. She committed federal wire fraud from the comfort of her own expensive suede couch. I did not stop my forensic data extraction at the initial application phase. I needed to establish a clear pattern of sustained criminal conspiracy. I accessed the automated clearinghouse routing logs for the pending contractor payout. The offshore escrow account was registered under a highly obscure limited liability company. I cross-referenced the corporate registration numbers with a global vendor database. The registered managing director of this offshore entity was Chloe's husband. They were not simply using my credit to renovate their kitchen. They were systematically laundering the $215,890.50 directly back into their own failing bank accounts. Eleanor was completely complicit in this elaborate financial laundering scheme. I pulled the specific digital communication logs from the regional banking server. Eleanor had personally called the automated loan servicing hotline exactly 3 times last week. She used my stolen Social Security number to verify the pending disbursement status. The bank records voice biometric data for all incoming customer service calls. I downloaded the raw audio files and ran a vocal waveform analysis. The software confirmed a 99.8% match to Eleanor's specific vocal cadence. I methodically compiled these undeniable data points into a comprehensive evidentiary dossier. I exported the raw server logs into a clean comma-separated values file. I generated a highly detailed pivot table demonstrating their exact chronological pattern of identity theft. I attached the original cryptographic certificates to mathematically prove the extracted data was completely unadulterated. No high-priced defense attorney could successfully challenge the absolute certainty of this digital audit. I burned the entire compiled dossier onto 3 separate encrypted physical flash drives. I drafted a formal identity theft affidavit using standard federal legal templates. I explicitly detailed their repeated violations of the Truth in Lending Act. I placed the encrypted physical drives into heavy manila envelopes. I printed the official shipping labels using my automated thermal barcode printer. I was methodically preparing to establish total operational dominance over my family. Their administrative trap was perfectly set and securely locked. I calmly waited for them. The physical ambush occurred exactly 48 hours after the initial account freeze. I was walking through the polished granite lobby of my residential building. Chloe and Eleanor sat together on a leather sofa near the security desk. They had bypassed the external call box by tailgating a legitimate resident. Chloe immediately stood up and deployed a highly rehearsed smile of sisterly affection. Eleanor remained seated and clutched a thick manila folder to her chest. They attempted a classic social engineering maneuver known as the false truce. Chloe spoke in a soft tone designed to project deep artificial vulnerability. She claimed the massive home equity loan was simply a misunderstood investment vehicle. She insisted her husband planned to flip the renovated property for immediate profit. She offered me a guaranteed 8.5% return on the initial capital. This specific return rate was mathematically absurd given current Federal Reserve lending benchmarks. Eleanor stood up and pushed the heavy manila folder directly into my hands. She claimed it was a standard retroactive authorization drafted by a personal attorney. They were actively trying to gaslight me into legally adopting their fraudulent debt. The printed contract demanded I instantly release the frozen offshore escrow funds. It also included a sweeping non-disclosure clause regarding the forged digital signatures. I ignored their expectant faces and analyzed the physical document in my hands. The boilerplate legal formatting contained 3 glaring syntactical errors in the indemnification clause. It fundamentally misunderstood the legal distinction between commercial underwriting and direct consumer liability. They were trying to bind me to a fraudulent contract using a discount internet template. The signature line demanded the immediate transfer of banking security tokens that did not exist. I observed their visibly elevated resting heart rates. I looked directly into her rapidly dilating pupils. I did not engage with their fabricated narrative of future family wealth. I calmly stated that retroactive authorization does not legally cure synthetic identity fraud. I explained that under federal lending statutes the original application must remain entirely truthful. Forging a signature automatically voids the entire underwriting contract upon immediate discovery. Eleanor began to breathe heavily and clutched her expensive designer handbag. She aggressively whispered that I was destroying our family over a simple clerical misunderstanding. Chloe demanded I sign the document immediately to save her marriage from financial ruin. She claimed her husband was facing an immediate corporate audit of his personal finances. The escrow freeze was triggering a severe margin call on his primary brokerage account. Their leverage was entirely gone. I remained silent. She threatened to scream and create a massive public scene in the residential lobby. I did not verbally reject their completely absurd legal proposition. I simply folded the invalid printed contract into a precise symmetrical square. I placed the document securely inside my dark winter wool coat pocket. I slowly turned away from them and walked toward the secured elevator bank. I left them standing completely powerless in the cold and empty lobby. The inevitable public confrontation occurred inside a glass conference room at the regional banking headquarters. Chloe and her marketing executive husband arrived exactly 7 minutes late. Eleanor followed closely behind them wearing a deeply tragic facial expression. They had aggressively demanded an emergency mediation session with the bank manager to unfreeze the escrow funds. I sat perfectly still at the head of the heavy oak table. My senior corporate compliance officer sat directly to my right. They assumed I was there to finally surrender. I opened my encrypted laptop and connected it to the large digital presentation monitor. I did not exchange any polite pleasantries. I immediately displayed the first high-definition evidentiary slide. It showed the exact Internet Protocol address used to submit the fraudulent loan. I highlighted the geographical map pointing directly to Chloe's suburban living room. Her husband scoffed and loudly claimed digital addresses can be easily spoofed by anonymous hackers. Before I dismantle his arrogant defense. Have you ever watched a cornered manipulator try to lie their way out of hard data? How did they react when the exit was blocked? Tell me your experience in the comments below. I advanced the presentation to the second highly detailed analytical slide. I displayed the global vendor registry for the offshore escrow account. I cross-referenced the corporate identification numbers with the husband's personal tax filings. He was listed as the sole managing director of the Shadow Limited Liability Company. I clearly explained they were not paying a legitimate general contractor. They were actively laundering $215,890 directly back to themselves. The bank manager stopped taking notes and stared at the digital screen in absolute shock. Eleanor attempted to intervene by loudly declaring my complete lack of familial loyalty. She claimed I was fabricating a ridiculous financial conspiracy to punish them. I calmly tapped the keyboard and triggered the third presentation slide. I played the raw audio waveform recording of her calling the loan servicing hotline. The automated vocal analysis matched her voice with 99.8% certainty. She was caught using my stolen Social Security number in high-fidelity digital audio. Her voice cracked as she frantically tried to deny her own recorded words. The husband suddenly stood up and aggressively pointed a finger at my chest. He demanded I delete the presentation immediately. He threatened to sue me for gross defamation of character. I did not flinch or raise my voice in response to his physical posturing. I handed the heavy manila envelopes directly to the senior compliance officer. I informed the room that these exact files were already scheduled for final delivery. They were heading to the Criminal Investigation Division of the Federal Reserve. The public utility of their carefully curated lies was permanently dismantled. Their fraudulent reality was collapsing under the crushing weight of empirical data. I watched the absolute terror finally reach their wide eyes. I checked my watch and noted the time of their defeat. The federal compliance packages arrived at the regional field office exactly at 8 in the morning. The systemic collapse of their artificial lives was mathematically inevitable. A senior forensic auditor at the regulatory agency flagged the husband's offshore shell corporation within 48 hours. They initiated an immediate hard asset freeze on his primary brokerage accounts pending a full federal investigation. His corporate employer panicked when the automated compliance software triggered a severe federal lien alert. The alert effectively blacklisted his marketing firm across the global banking network. He was unceremoniously terminated from his executive position by the end of the week. He defaulted on a massive margin loan totaling $412,500. His financial ruin was absolute. Chloe faced a similar structural implosion. The regional commercial bank immediately foreclosed on her sprawling suburban estate. They cited the fraudulent home equity application as a catastrophic breach of the original mortgage covenant. She was forced to vacate the property in less than 14 days. The heavy construction equipment remained abandoned on her uncompleted imported marble kitchen floor. She attempted to secure a high-risk bridge loan to cover her mounting legal retainers. Every single lending institution rejected her application based on the active federal security freeze linked to her digital profile. Her pristine social facade dissolved in less than 10 business days. Eleanor experienced the rapid evaporation of her curated luxury lifestyle. The Criminal Investigation Division of the Federal Reserve easily traced her voice biometric data. The local authorities arrested her in the lobby of her expensive cosmetic dermatology clinic. She was formally charged with 3 specific counts of synthetic identity fraud under Title 18. The regional bank immediately locked her personal checking accounts to secure the pending federal tax liens. She could not afford her luxury car lease payment of exactly $1,240. The dealership repossessed the vehicle from the clinic parking lot while she was being processed. I watched their frantic social media updates shift from curated wealth to absolute chaotic despair. Chloe attempted to call my encrypted phone line 27 times in a single afternoon. I routed her specific phone number directly to a disconnected automated server response. I successfully optimized my personal financial system by permanently excising the corrupted variables. Their profound entitlement was no longer a liability to my operational efficiency. The digital purge was flawlessly executed. I sat quietly in the center of my modest downtown apartment. The ambient street noise of Boston was a steady, faint rhythm against my double-paned glass windows. My secure dual monitors displayed my highly optimized personal credit dashboard. My federal identity profile was now completely secure. My baseline credit score remained at a flawless 840 points. The active threat was officially and permanently neutralized. Chloe and Eleanor were currently navigating the brutal reality of their mathematical choices. They assumed that biological relation was a permanent shield against basic financial accountability. They believed they could infinitely extract my resources without triggering a systemic collapse. They were fundamentally and categorically incorrect. A biological family is simply another complex network of variable risk. When specific internal components become highly toxic, the entire system must either purge them entirely or suffer complete catastrophic failure. I chose to initiate the permanent purge protocol. Do you believe some biological ties must be permanently severed to protect your own peace? Tell me your final verdict in the comments below. I checked the automated Federal Reserve server logs one last time before logging off. The central banking firewall was highly effective in deflecting all unauthorized queries related to my primary Social Security number. Their fading digital desperation was registering as faint background static on my secure terminal. I closed the complex command line interface and manually locked the high-definition display screen. I finally felt a profound sense of total operational equilibrium. I had successfully protected the primary asset and systematically neutralized the lingering structural threats. The crushing burden of their endless entitlement was permanently lifted from my tired shoulders. The raw data was perfectly clean and highly structured. The cold silence in the room was incredibly beautiful.